is a plan for your life, a divine design, a path carved out by the very hands of the Almighty. You may not see it now. You may be walking through darkness, through uncertainty, through storms that shake your soul. But listen to me. God knows where He's leading you. Too often we wrestle with questions. Why is this happening to me? Why is the door closed? Why am I facing this trial? But what if I told you that the closed door was a blessing? What if I told you that the storm was shaping you? That the detour wasn't a mistake, but the hand of God guiding you to something greater? Joseph, the young man in the Bible, had a dream. He saw himself as a ruler, someone destined for greatness, but before the dream came to pass, he was betrayed, sold into slavery, thrown into prison for a crime he didn't commit. Imagine the confusion. Imagine the pain. God, I thought you had a plan for me. Why am I in this pit? Why am I in chains? But God knew the path. He was positioning Joseph, refining him, preparing him for a greater calling. And when the time was right, when the season had come, Joseph was lifted from the prison to the palace. Listen to me. Your struggle is not the end of the story. Your delay is not your denial. God knows the right path. You may feel forgotten, but God has not forgotten you. Think about Thomas Edison. He failed over 1,000 times before he invented the light bulb. 1,000 failures. Most people would have given up, but he kept going. Why? Because deep inside he knew he was meant for more. The obstacles weren't there to stop him. They were there to build him. You may feel stuck right now. You may feel like nothing is working. But I tell you, if you trust in God's plan, if you stay faithful, if you keep walking, the path will become clear. There's a reason you didn't get that job. There's a reason that relationship ended. There's a reason you're facing this challenge. God sees what you cannot see. That rejection was protection. That failure was a setup for something greater. That pain is shaping you into the person He created you to be. You might be standing at the edge of uncertainty, afraid to take the next step. But hear me, when God calls you, He has already prepared the way. The Red Sea didn't part until Moses stepped forward. Peter didn't walk on water until he got out of the boat. The miracle happens when you trust the path God has laid before you. Maybe you're facing a sickness. Maybe you're burdened with financial struggles. Maybe you're fighting battles that no one else sees. But I promise you, God knows. He has counted your tears. He has heard your prayers. And when the time is right, you will see why He allowed you to walk this road. So stand firm, keep believing, keep pressing forward, because the God who created the stars, the God who spoke the universe into existence, the God who has never failed, not once, has already prepared the right path for you. And when you finally see it, when you finally step into your destiny, you look back and say, now I understand, now I see. God knew all along. Keep walking. Keep trusting, because your breakthrough is coming. God's plan is greater than your understanding. No matter how much you try to figure it out, no matter how much you analyze, there will always be moments in life when you don't see the full picture. That's because God is not limited by time, by circumstances, or by human reasoning. He sees the end from the beginning. He knows what you need before you even ask. And while you may be walking through uncertainty, wondering why things are happening the way they are, God is orchestrating every step with divine precision. Think about a child in the back seat of a car. The child may not understand the roads, the turns, or why the driver takes a different route than expected, but the driver knows. The driver sees the traffic ahead. The driver knows the destination and the best way to get there. That's how it is with God. You may be frustrated because life is not going according to your plan, but your plan is limited. Your perspective is small compared to the vast wisdom of God. He knows what detours are necessary. He knows what delays are protecting you from unseen dangers. Look at the story of David. As a young shepherd, he was anointed to be king. Yet instead of immediately stepping into his destiny, he was sent back to the fields. He faced battles, rejection, and years of waiting. From the outside, it might have seemed unfair, but God was preparing him, strengthening him, molding him into the leader he needed to be. Had David taken the throne too soon, he wouldn't have been ready. God's plan required time, trials, and patience, and when the right moment came, David was exactly where he needed to be. You may feel like you're in a waiting season, like you've been praying, working, believing, but nothing is changing. That doesn't mean God has forgotten you. It means He is preparing you. You may not understand why doors are closing, why relationships are shifting, why challenges keep coming, but trust that God is in control. He is guiding you towards something far greater than you could ever imagine. If you could see the full picture now, you would realize that every delay, every challenge, and every redirection was not a setback. It was God's way of leading you to something better. What looks like a closed door is often a blessing in disguise. It's easy to feel frustrated when opportunities slip through your fingers, when relationships fall apart, or when things don't work out the way you planned. You may wonder, why did this happen? Why was I rejected? Why did I lose what I thought was meant for me? But what if that rejection was actually protection? What if that closed door was not meant to keep you out, but to redirect you to something greater? Think about a time when you desperately wanted something. A job, a promotion, a relationship, and it didn't happen. In that moment, it felt like a loss. But later, maybe months or years down the road, you saw how things unfolded. You realized that if you had gotten what you wanted, trials are not meant to break you, they are meant to prepare you. Every challenge, every setback, every painful moment is shaping you into the person you need to become. It may not feel like it now, but the struggles you face are refining you, strengthening you, and equipping you for the next level of your life. Without trials, there is no growth. Without pressure, there is no transformation. Look at the life of Joseph. He had a dream, a vision of greatness, but before he could step into that destiny, he had to go through the fire. Betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. Everything in his life seemed to be falling apart. If anyone had a reason to give up, it was Joseph. But what he didn't see in the moment was that every trial was positioning him for something greater. The betrayal led him to Egypt. The false accusation placed him in prison, but that prison was the very place where he would meet the man who would later introduce him to Pharaoh. And in one divine moment, he went from the pit to the palace, from a prisoner to the second most powerful man in Egypt. The trials weren't a punishment, they were preparation. Think about gold. Before it shines, before it becomes something valuable, it must go through the fire. The impurities must be burned away. The same is true for you. The trials you are facing are not there to destroy you. They are there to refine you. They are shaping your character, strengthening your faith, and preparing you for something bigger than you can imagine. Look at athletes who train for a championship. They endure grueling workouts, push through pain, and discipline themselves daily. They don't see the results immediately, but they trust the process. They know that the struggle is necessary for victory. Your life is no different. The hardships you face are building resilience, endurance, and wisdom. The very thing you see as a struggle today may be the key to your breakthrough tomorrow. So when trials come, don't lose heart. Don't question why it's happening. Trust that it's happening for a reason. You may not see it now, but one day you will look back and realize that every difficulty, every challenge, every storm was leading you exactly where you were meant to be. Faith is not just believing, it's moving forward even when you don't see the full picture. Too many people wait for absolute clarity before taking a step. But that's not how faith works. Faith requires action. It requires stepping out when the path is unclear, trusting that God will make a way. If you wait until everything is certain, you'll stay stuck where you are. The greatest miracles happen when you take a step, even when fear and doubt whisper that you should stay still. Look at Moses standing before the Red Sea. Behind him, Pharaoh's army was closing in. The people were panicked. There was no way forward, no visible escape. But God told Moses to move. He didn't part the sea first. He commanded action first. And the moment Moses stretched out his staff, the waters divided. The miracle happened only after he took that step of faith. Think about Peter when he saw Jesus walking on water. The waves were crashing, the wind was howling, and logic said, stay in the boat. But something inside him told him to step out. The moment he moved, the impossible became possible. He walked on water, not because he understood how, but because he was willing to take the step before the explanation. Life will not always give you a clear roadmap. Sometimes God will call you to take a step when you don't know what's ahead. Maybe it's starting a new business, moving to a new city, or walking away from something that no longer serves you. Fear will tell you to wait. Doubt will say, what if you fail? But faith says, go, even when you don't have all the answers. The breakthrough doesn't come from standing still. It comes from moving forward. Every person who has ever done something great has had to step out before they saw the result. Thomas Edison didn't wait for proof that the light bulb would work. He kept trying despite countless failures. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't wait for everyone to agree before he marched for justice. They moved in faith, trusting that the right path would reveal itself along the way. You may not see the whole picture now, but if God has placed something in your heart, don't wait for absolute certainty. Take the step. Move forward. The moment you do, you will find that God has already made a way. Pain is never without purpose. Every hardship, every struggle, every tear you've cried is doing something in you, shaping you, molding you into the person you were meant to be. It's easy to question why suffering comes, why life feels unfair, why you have to endure things that others seem to escape. But what if your pain is not there to break you, but to build you? What if, in the very thing you wish would go away, God is preparing you for something far greater than you can imagine? Look at the process of a diamond. A diamond doesn't start as something beautiful. It begins as a lump of carbon, buried deep in the earth, under immense pressure and intense heat. Without that pressure, without that fire, it would remain nothing more than a rock. But because it endures, because it withstands the crushing force, it transforms into something valuable, something strong, something unbreakable. The pain you are going through is your pressure, your fire. It is turning you into something greater than you were before. Think about the story of Job. He lost everything, his wealth, his health, his family. If anyone had a reason to question God, to give up, to walk away from faith, it was him. But Job endured. He held on to hope even when his world was falling apart. And in the end, his losses were restored, his blessings multiplied. What seemed like the end of his life was actually a setup for a greater testimony. His pain had a purpose. Some of the strongest, most compassionate, most resilient people you will ever meet are those who have walked through fire and survived. They have faced heartbreak, betrayal, failure, and loss. But instead of being destroyed by it, they allowed it to strengthen them. The pain gave them wisdom. The struggle gave them depth. The hardship gave them perspective. You may not understand why you're going through what you're going through right now. You may be asking why life has been so difficult, why you've had to endure things others haven't. But if you look back on your life, you will see that every painful moment taught you something, refined you in some way. You are not being punished, you are being prepared. One day you will see that the very thing that hurt you was the very thing that shaped you into who you were meant to be. God sees what you cannot see. Why you focus on what's in front of you, on the struggle, the delay, the uncertainty. He is looking at the bigger picture. He sees the connections you don't know exist, the opportunities waiting just beyond your current situation, the dangers He has already protected you from. You may feel like life isn't making sense, like doors are closing without reason, but God is moving pieces into place that you won't understand until the right time. Think about a GPS. When you're driving, you may not know every turn ahead, but the GPS does. It sees the roadblocks, the detours, the traffic congestion. Sometimes it reroutes you in ways that don't make sense in the moment. You might think, well, why am I going this way? This isn't the shortest route. But later you realize that if you had gone your way, you would have been stuck in traffic or delayed by an accident. God works the same way. When He shifts your path, when He delays your plans, when He closes a door, it's because He sees something you don't. Look at the life of Esther. She was an orphan, taken from her home, placed in a palace where she didn't understand her purpose at first. But God saw ahead. He knew that one day she would be in the perfect position to save her people. If she had questioned everything, if she had resisted the unfamiliar path, she wouldn't have been ready when the moment of destiny arrived. Many times we ask God for things, but when they don't happen the way we expect, we assume He isn't listening. Maybe you prayed for a job, but you didn't get it. Maybe you wanted a certain opportunity, but it fell through. But what if that job would have led you to misery? What if that opportunity wasn't right for you? What if God was saying, not this one, I have something better? You might be frustrated right now, thinking that your plans have failed. But what if they haven't failed? What if they're just being redirected? God sees what is coming. He sees the relationships that will hurt you, the choices that will lead to regret, the opportunities that are not meant for you. And while you are focused on what didn't work, He is preparing something far greater than you could ever imagine. Keep walking, even when the path is unclear. It's easy to move forward when everything is going right, when life is smooth and the next step is obvious. But real faith is tested in the moments of uncertainty, in the seasons where nothing makes sense, when doors stay closed, when prayers seem unanswered, when progress feels impossible. That is when you must keep going. Think about Noah. God told him to build an ark when there was no sign of rain. He worked day after day, year after year, with no evidence that a flood was coming. People mocked him. He probably had moments of doubt, but he kept building, he kept believing, and when the rain finally came, he was ready. What if he had stopped halfway? What if he had given up because he couldn't see the storm yet? Many people quit too soon. They stop believing because they don't see results immediately. They walk away from dreams, relationships, and callings because things aren't happening fast enough. But what they don't realize is that the breakthrough was just around the corner. The darkest moment often comes right before the dawn. The moment you feel like giving up. is usually the moment just before everything shifts. Life will test you with seasons of waiting, with times when you feel lost, with moments when nothing seems to be working. But every great story, every powerful testimony, every person who has ever achieved something meaningful has had to walk through uncertainty. They kept going, even when they couldn't see the destination. You may not understand the road you're on right now, but if you keep walking, if you keep trusting, one day you'll look back and see that every step was leading you exactly where you were meant to be. One day you will look back and see that God's hand was in every detail. The moments of confusion, the seasons of struggle, the doors that closed, the opportunities that slipped away, they all had a purpose. What felt like disappointment was actually divine direction. What seemed like failure was setting you up for something greater. Think about your past. How many times have you faced something that felt like the end, only to realize later that it was a new beginning? Maybe you lost a job, and at the time it felt devastating. But later you found something better, something you never would have considered if that door hadn't closed. Maybe you faced heartbreak, wondering why things didn't work out, only to realize later that God was protecting you from something that wasn't meant for you. Joseph, after years of betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment, stood in a position of power and finally understood why everything had happened the way it did. He told his brothers, "What you meant for evil, God meant for good. What they had done to harm him, God had used to fulfill his plan." Life rarely makes sense in the moment. The struggles you face now may not seem to have a purpose, but one day the pieces will come together. One day you will look back and see that every step, every hardship, every delay was leading you towards something better than you could have imagined. You may not understand it now, but trust that God does. His hand has been on your life from the beginning, guiding, protecting, and positioning you. And one day you will see it clearly. You were never lost, never forgotten. You were always on the right path. Life is a journey full of twists and turns, unexpected detours and moments of uncertainty. But through it all, one truth remains. God knows the right path for you. Every closed door, every challenge, every delay is not a sign of failure, but a step towards something greater. You may not always understand why things happen the way they do, but faith is about trusting even when you can't see the full picture. God's plan is beyond human understanding. He redirects, He refines, and He prepares. Trials are not punishments. They are part of the process. Setbacks are not signs to quit. They are setups for a greater purpose. When you step forward in faith, even when the road is unclear, you position yourself for the miracles waiting ahead. One day, everything will make sense. One day you will look back and see that every struggle had meaning, every disappointment had purpose, and every painful moment was shaping you for the destiny God had prepared. So don't give up, don't lose heart, and don't stop walking. Keep believing, keep trusting, and keep moving forward. God's path may not always be the easiest, but it is always the best. And when the time is right, you will see He was leading you exactly where you were meant to be all along.